Okay, so now is our last step that we're going to be working on. I'm going to make yet another layer because I love working on layers. We're going from black and white to our medium gray, and now I'm going to go ahead and add in a lighter gray as well as a darker gray. This is going to help to ease the transition from kind of our medium gray into white or our medium gray into black. So we're going to go ahead and apply these. So remember that we're still applying them as shapes. I don't want you doing scritchy scratch kind of lines or anything like that. It's not like cross-hatching. You're applying these as big blobs of value, big blobs, okay, big shapes. So you'll grab your paintbrush and we'll go ahead and jump on in. And remember that as you need to reapply, maybe your black, your white, your medium gray, or go ahead and grab any particular values that you're working with. When you have that brush tool selected, you can always press Alt-Option, and that's going to allow you to pull up the color picker so you can go ahead and grab those as you go. I'm referencing my picture of Leon here up in the top corner, my screenshot from the trailer. I'm just going to go ahead and apply the value where I see fit. And I might second guess myself. Maybe I think to myself, this was originally a medium gray, but I'm looking at it now and I kind of want it to be a lighter gray instead. That works just as fine too. So I'm going to go ahead and use my lighter gray. I'll go ahead and switch over and start applying some darker gray. And you can see here, once you do that, it really helps kind of soften the overall picture. It makes it much more kind of busy. Now, once you have totally completed going through the whole process of adding in your darker grays and your lighter grays, and you've softened everything and it's starting to look more realistic, kind of still scratchy, but more realistic, start to imagine that you can kind of blur your eyes a little bit, right? Start to kind of squint and see where you still see the edges of values. If I can squint, like for example on his forehead right now, I can clearly see a dividing line between that dark gray and that light gray. So I'm going to definitely want to add in some kind of transitionary gray in there. Once you've done all 5 of your values, right? So your dark gray, your medium gray, your light gray, your black, and your white. Once you've applied everything and you're feeling pretty good with it, at this point, you can start to open up the floodgates. Grab any level of gray that you want to. Drop your opacity down and start to kind of mix and match and kind of sink your teeth into the picture a little bit more. That's all absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But going forward, I still want to encourage you for this very first digital portrait project to not use the blur tool. Right? In Photoshop, there is a tool that will allow you to kind of blend and blur your colors together. I don't want you to use that yet. We will use that eventually, and it's going to be a big help to us, but I really want to make sure that there's a strong foundation in your brain as you're painting these things. I want to make sure there's a strong foundation of these shapes of value, right? So I'm just going to go ahead here and kind of like clean up what I'm working on. I'm reapplying some highlights. Maybe I lost a little bit along the way. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of clean this picture up so that I'm more happy with it. Okay, now, something you can do is you can always flip your canvas. That's definitely a useful thing to do. If you flip your canvas, that will allow you to see some pieces that you need to correct. So whenever I flipped it there, I could see that I was feeling pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm just adding in some different values. I've dropped my opacity. I'm using my color picker to grab some different values here, not necessarily the original 5, and I'm just going to kind of keep softening those lines. I'm squinting my eyes as I go along, and anywhere I see a very harsh dividing line, I'm going to go ahead and kind of start chipping that away and softening that. For like his collar, I don't mind leaving it a little bit more of a harder edge because it is on top of his actual body. All right, so you can already see in that neck, that's much more realistic than it was just mere moments ago. I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same thing. I'm going to make a new layer and start working on his forehead. And I'm going to keep kind of just hammering away at this, working around his forehead, over towards his eye, and onwards. And you're going to go through with your picture and kind of start to soften and simplify everything down into a much more realistic form of itself. So all of these shapes are kind of guideposts. They tell you where the shadows are, but you will be going back and forth. You will be painting over top of them. Start with the biggest brush that you possibly can and slowly whittle that brush size down to the point where you actually need it to be more detailed. Don't start with a tiny brush. It's not going to help you, okay? Okay. So this is looking pretty good at this point. I've got a lot more work to go, so I'm going to go ahead and just keep finishing this. And then you guys go ahead and work on yours as well. Remember that this is our very first painting, so it does not need to be beautiful and perfect in every way. It just needs to be something that you're happy with. mix in all the different values that you want to, start to add in tiny little edges and little reflections, and this thing is going to be beautiful. All right, thanks guys, bye.